Better Call Saul and Stranger Things are two wildly successful TV shows that released their newest seasons in 2022. On the surface, these shows could not be more different from one another. One is a realistic, drama-filled depiction of an attorney's fall from decency and the collateral damage caused along the way. The other is a campy, supernatural adventure about a group of teens battling creatures from an alternate dimension. But these two shows have one very important thing in common. They capture the human spirit. They have characters we can connect with, relatable characters who act and talk like real people, which is becoming surprisingly hard to find in shows and movies these days. Thanks to some stellar writing and acting, Better Call Saul and Stranger Things gave us the two most powerful moments in television this year, one of tragedy and one of triumph, and I'm here to break them both down. If you haven't yet watched Season 4 of Stranger Things, or Season 6 of Better Call Saul, I'm going to be talking about some heavy spoilers, so consider this your warning. I'm going to start with Better Call Saul, a show about a criminal lawyer turned criminal lawyer. Jimmy McGill was a con man in his youth and tries to turn his life around by becoming an attorney. The problem is that most people around him, mainly his stern brother Chuck, would only ever see him as Slippin' Jimmy, a con man. And in Chuck's words, Slippin' Jimmy with a law degree is like a chimp with a machine gun. Jimmy, who later takes on the Saul Goodman persona, is a character that's explored deeply, showing us that he's far more than just the one-note comic relief that we see in Breaking Bad. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to shift the focus over to Howard Hamlin, who is without doubt the most tragic character in the show. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of background about Howard Hamlin's character and how the perception of him changes between seasons 1 and 6. But if you want to skip straight to the part where I talk about his tragic end, you can skip right to this timestamp. Played brilliantly by Patrick Fabian, Howard is partners with Chuck at Hamlin McGill, a firm that Jimmy longs to join. In the first season, Howard is mainly used as a red herring, the guy we think is going to be a major antagonist in the show. He comes across as arrogant and condescending, and appears to be responsible for Jimmy not getting the job he rightfully deserves. We soon find out that it's actually Chuck pulling the strings, and that Howard was simply the one taking the fall for his longtime partner's schemes. This is when we get to see a hint of complexity in Howard, who chats with Jimmy after the fact. He recognizes Jimmy's talents and his dedication toward caring for Chuck through his chronic illness. Moving forward, we can appreciate Howard a little more, but it's still hard to like him in seasons 2 and 3. When Jimmy airs an unauthorized commercial affecting one of HHM's clients, Howard punishes Kim Wexler, Jimmy's love interest and a lawyer who works at Hamlin McGill. Kim knew about the commercial and neglected to tell Howard about it, so he puts her in doc review for long evening hours. Howard's actions here aren't completely unjustified, but it's easier to sympathize more with Kim at this point, because we as the audience have spent so much more time with her, and because we've seen what a great and hard-working lawyer she is. Even though Howard has been fleshed out more since season 1, at this point, it's still easy for us to see him as the rich douchebag flexing his authority over our main characters. Howard doesn't hate Jimmy or Kim, but he does see the danger in their increasingly unethical behavior. He aids Chuck in trying to get Jimmy disbarred, but Chuck goes on a legendary tirade over his brother. This prompts an increase in Chuck's malpractice insurance, which then prompts Howard to ask for his retirement. It's a tough but understandable move on Howard's part, given that he's doing some damage control and trying to save the reputation of his late father's firm. This sends Chuck off the deep end, however, and he eventually commits suicide. Season 4 is when we see a major shift in Howard Hamlin's character. He's no longer just another foil for Kim and Jimmy, but he truly becomes a sympathetic man who recognizes his flaws and tries to work on himself. Howard is a mess, putting all of the blame of Chuck's death on himself. What he doesn't know is that Jimmy is the one who had sabotaged Chuck by giving their insurance rep information about his mental condition, leading to the drastic increase in cost. It's here where we see the dichotomy of Jimmy and Howard's characters. They both contributed to Chuck's relapse, but they have completely opposite reactions to his death. Howard is riddled with guilt, shame, and insomnia, and takes the initiative to see a therapist on a regular basis. Jimmy, meanwhile, masks his guilt by diving deeper into his Saul Goodman persona, and doesn't acknowledge any wrongdoing. He even goes so far as to guilt Howard and try to put all the blame on him. We see the results of both of these paths culminate in season 5. Howard is able to work through his demons thanks to therapy, and does his best to make amends by offering Jimmy a coveted position at Hamlin McGill. And I don't think it's a pity offer, but a genuine interest in really wanting to work with him. Jimmy, whose suppressed guilt and anger is clearly building up, pulls immature pranks on Howard, such as throwing bowling balls at his car and sending prostitutes to his business lunch. Howard, in a shockingly calm manner, confronts Jimmy about this, leading to an outburst. Jimmy goes off on Howard, accusing him of killing Chuck and telling him his job offer means nothing to him. Howard, who is able to move on from his guilt in a healthy manner, is unfazed by this childish tantrum and simply walks away. This scene perfectly demonstrates how one man confronts his flaws and seeks improvement, while the other refuses to accept responsibility for anything. It's truly amazing how Howard went from being a mostly unlikable boss in the early seasons of the show to becoming the kindest, most mature, and sympathetic character in the later ones. Patrick Fabian also deserves a lot of credit for bringing so much humanity to this role. And then, Season 6 happened. Oh man. Jimmy and Kim come up with an elaborate scheme to ruin Howard's reputation, with the hope that it'll speed up the settlement of a major case that will lead to 7-figure paydays for our attorneys. They slowly work to paint a picture of him as a drug addict who hires and abuses prostitutes. Meanwhile, we see more of Howard's personal struggles. He continues going to therapy and tries to mend a shaky marriage. There's one scene where he takes the time to artfully make a cappuccino for his wife, only for her to carelessly dump it into a travel mug. It's really sad to see how most of the people in Howard's life are either neglecting him or plotting against him, especially when he's genuinely trying his best to be a good person. In the episode Plan and Execution, there's a scene where an intern drops some cans of soda. For a split second, we wonder if Season 1 Howard will come out. The intern looks nervous at first, but Howard kindly helps him pick the cans up and even shows him a cool trick on how to prevent them from spraying when opening them. This scene is a great example of how our perception of Howard changed throughout the course of the show. In Season 1, he comes across as the intimidating boss man, asserting his power over everyone. In Season 6, we see him for the kind man he really is. But unfortunately, Jimmy and Kim's scheme works, and thanks to a topical drug they got from a vet, they successfully make him look like a raving drug addict during an important meeting. Later that night, it's when we get the most powerful and shocking moment in the entire show. With a marriage falling apart, a major career setback, and his reputation in the toilet, Howard has hit rock bottom. He goes to Jimmy and Kim's place and, after some drinks, goes on a long rant. He echoes the audience sentiments by calling them out for their schemes and corruption. What struck me here is that, despite everything that happened to him, he still has confidence that he'll land on his feet again. This level of resilience amidst a drunken rant is admirable. But then, the two worlds of Better Call Saul collide. For 6 seasons, the cartel storylines had been mostly separated from the legal elements of the show. Lalo Salamanca, a dangerous man with connections to Jimmy, shows up. He's arguably the most brutal antagonist in the show, and effortlessly kills people with no emotion or remorse. Seeing Lalo in the same room as Howard was surreal, as up to that point, they almost seemed like characters from 2 completely different shows. With the flicker of the candle and a creeping shadow behind Howard, Lalo shows up like the angel of death. Everything about the scene is just eerie, from the musical score, to the cinematography, to Jimmy's horrified expression. Seriously, Bob Odenkirk deserved an Emmy just for that facial expression alone. My heart was pounding by this point, and it's then when Better Call Saul delivered one of the most jaw-dropping moments in television history. Howard tries to leave, only for Lalo to shoot him point blank in the head. It was such a brutal and sudden death for a character that we'd grown to love over 6 years of watching the show. What's also harsh about the scene is knowing that Howard Hamlin was just another kill for Lalo, a nameless victim that he'll probably forget about the next day. Howard's death was shocking, disturbing, and most of all sad. His character did everything he could to improve himself and be the best man he could for the people around him. But in Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould's harsh world of crime, Howard Hamlin became nothing more than collateral damage from the greedy actions of the corrupt. The other television scene from 2022 that left me breathless was the Season 4 Stranger Things episode titled Dear Billy. It's an episode about confronting loss, self-forgiveness, and the importance of knowing our reasons to live. The episode mainly centers around Max Mayfield, a teenage girl struggling through the loss of her stepbrother, Billy. Max was a character who was introduced in Season 2, and was shown to be tomboyish with her love of video games and skateboarding. Her character leading up to Season 4 wasn't bad, I just didn't think she made that big of an impression. There are so many characters in Stranger Things that it can be tough to keep track of all of them. But man, she steals the show in Season 4. Max deals with the guilt over her stepbrother Billy's death, beating herself up over the fact that she stood frozen while Billy was killed by the Mind Flayer in Season 3. She pushes away her friends, ends her relationship with Lucas, and becomes a loner. With her mind vulnerable, Max is tormented by Vecna, a Freddy Krueger-like being from the upside-down dimension that can enter people's minds and kill them. Vecna had already claimed a few other victims by this point in the show, and it was clear that he was targeting Max next. While Max's friends scramble to figure out how they can save her, Max begins to accept the imminence of her death. She writes letters to all of her loved ones, including her friends, her mother, and even Billy. It's heartbreaking to see someone so young feel like her life is meaningless and coming to such a quick and gruesome end. A deeper meaning behind Max's guilt is revealed when Vecna accuses her of being relieved at Billy's death, given that her stepbrother had made her life a living hell. Max denies this, but there's still a part of her that seems to believe that she doesn't even deserve to live. Vecna's plan of isolating and guilting her is working. The clock is ticking, and the gang finds out that familiar music opens a part of the mind that allows a victim to escape from Vecna's curse. When Vecna makes his move, Max's mind is transported to the mind layer, where he corners her and prepares to kill her. In the physical world, her friends desperately try to snap her out of her trance and begin playing her favorite song, Kate Bush's Runnin' Up That Hill. And if you've heard that song on the radio a lot lately, Stranger Things is the reason why. The Mind Layer is a scary-looking place, and Vecna is seconds away from killing Max, but once the song starts playing, she sees a glimpse of her friends desperately trying to wake her up. We get flashbacks of all the fun times she had with them. She remembers Lucas's words, "I don't want a letter. Just talk to me, to your friends. We're right here. I'm right here." It's these precious words and memories that help Max realize that she does have a reason to live. It's a powerful message that no matter how hopeless your situation seems, and no matter how lonely you feel, there's always someone out there who cares about you. There's always someone willing to fight for you. Max, who's been pushing away her friends all this time, finally sees that they are her reason to live. She fights off Vecna, and suddenly, the girl who was accepting her fate is now running for her life. She races across the mine layer, dodging falling debris while an orchestral version of Runnin' Up That Hill plays. Now, I'm usually pretty good at predicting if a character lives or dies, but I was genuinely on the edge of my seat the first time I watched this. It's intense, emotional, and epic in every sense of the word. The music choice is perfect, the acting is stellar, the visual effects are stellar, and the tension is sky high. The Duffer Brothers really outdid themselves with this scene, which is probably the best moment in the entire series. Max wakes up in the embrace of her friends, realizing that she escaped Vecna. A grand moment of triumph for her after battling so much guilt and self-hatred. Sadie Sink deserves a lot of credit for her performance, and I'm honestly surprised that she didn't get an Emmy nomination. Max initially seemed like just another side character, but in my opinion, she became the emotional center of Stranger Things. Better Call Saul and Stranger Things were two bright spots for entertainment in 2022, and they gave us TV's two most breathtaking moments of the year. A shocking and tragic end for one character, and a powerful epiphany and escape for another. What are your thoughts? Any other moments in TV that stood out to you this past year? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a good one.